A female viewer recently asked the following question. After listening to the rabbi's interview on the issue of Shomer Negiah, I am unclear if it is okay to sit next to a man on a bus when I know that accidental touching will occur. What does the halacha have to say about this?
Let us begin by quoting briefly from Rambam in Hilchot Yisuret Biyah, Perek Kaf Aleph, the beginning. Rambam writes, Kol haba ala erwa minhu arayot derech evarim. If a person has some form of sexual encounter with a person of the opposite sex, a person who is referred to as erwa, even if it is not normal sexual intercourse, or shehibek v'nishek derech ta'awa v'nahana b'kiruv basar, or if a person hugged or kissed such a person, this is, we're talking about a deliberate action, in other words, of kissing or hugging the person, and it was done with the intention of enjoying or gaining some pleasure from this contact. Hare za loka min haTorah. Such a person, according to the Rambam, is violating one of the miswot of the Torah. The essential pasuk in this regard is that which is in Sefer Vayikra Perek Yod Het, where it says, "Lo tiqrevu legaloth arwa." One is not allowed to bring oneself close to a person who is considered arwa. Generally speaking, any woman to whom one is not married, if we're talking about a man, or vice versa, any man that is not a woman's husband, one is not to come into physical contact with such a person, with the other person. If there is any element of pleasure or a physically pleasing sensation in the act of kissing or hugging or what have you. All this is, according to the Rambam, is asur min haTorah. There are those who disagree, who claim that hugging such a person, for example, is not asur min haTorah, it is asur min derabanan, min divrei sofarim, according to rabbinical decree. According to Rambam, it is asur min haTorah. That is number one. To sum up, Rambam says that any form of physical contact between a man and a woman who are not married and living as a married couple, any such contact is asur min haTorah. Rambam goes on to say later in Halacha Wa'al, a person who hugs a woman, let's say a man who hugs a woman who is not someone he's married to, but it is a woman with regards to whom a normal person has no sexual feelings at all, such as his aunt or his older sister or something of that nature. Rambam says, Af al pi she'en sham ta'wa v'lo hana'a, even though there is clearly no sexual desire or pleasure involved, this, nevertheless, such an action is to be very much discouraged. It is unseemly and improper. And it is therefore prohibited, says Rambam. And it is the type of behavior that one can expect only from foolish, light-headed, and unschooled people. Why, says Rambam? She'en kerevim le'erwa kalal, because one does not do anything in order to come closer to such a person with whom one is not allowed to have sexual relations. That is the general background to our discussion. What we can clearly understand from Rambam's wording is that which is prohibited is any action which is deliberate, which is initiated by a person, a man or a woman, in order to bring about such physical contact with the other person of the opposite sex to whom one is not married. However, if we are discussing a person getting on a crowded bus where he or she will have to squeeze by other people perhaps, this is something altogether different, because here there is clearly no intention on the person's part. Any possible contact that may occur was not initiated deliberately. It is also not going to lead to any kind of sensation of pleasure, there's no sexual desire involved at all, and therefore it is not included within the purview of what Rambam just taught us. And this very idea was also, this halacha, this question was raised already many years ago to Rav Moshe Feinstein, Agona Gadol Rabbeinu Moshe Feinstein Zitzal. This teshuvah that he writes on the subject in the second section of Even HaEzer of Igroth Moshe, Siman Yod Daled, is from the year 1960, Tafshin Kaf. And I read just a few words from this teshuvah. Rav Moshe Feinstein writes as follows. Mithad hanuri'ah udhifa banashim, the fact that a person may have to squeeze by and thus come into some form of brief contact with, shall we say, in the case of a man, with women on a crowded subway or a bus. This is what's being referred to here in this response of Rav Feinstein. Leka shum isur mishum de'en zederech ta'awa v'hiba. There is no prohibition, there is no isur involved in this at all, says Rav Feinstein, because there is clearly no intention. It is not being done in the manner of someone who wishes to bring about such contact. There is no intention of having such contact. There is no pleasure to be derived from such contact. And therefore, this is entirely permissible, says Rav Moshe Feinstein. So getting on a crowded bus or a subway or anything similar, where it's quite possible, in fact, perhaps even inevitable, that there will be some uncontemplated and entirely unwanted, in fact, but nevertheless inevitable contact with other people of the opposite sex on the bus or the train or what have you. This is not prohibited at all, says Rav Moshe Feinstein. He also, Rav Moshe Feinstein also relates to this specific question that was asked in this case by this viewer regarding sitting next to a person on a bus, for example. And here too, he answers, he says, and I quote, he says, for this reason also, en shum isur, he says, leshev esel isha kesheleka makom aher. When there's no other available place, which implies if there is, one should sit elsewhere perhaps. But if there is no other seat on the train, on the bus, a man can sit next to a woman, even though there might be some contact involved, whether it's getting into the seat, getting out of the seat, or what have you. Why? For the same reason, because this too is not being done with any intention of initiating such contact or deriving any pleasure from such contact. On the other hand, I would also state that if a person feels uncomfortable, as they may well feel if they were to sit next to someone and they judge, they estimate from the way this person sits, the size of the person, etc., that there will be definite, as they're sitting together on the bus, there will be a definite physical contact. If a person feels uncomfortable with this fact, then it's perfectly correct, and perhaps even desirable, not to do so. It's not asur, it's not prohibited, but it is perfectly mutar for a person to feel that this is unseemly or uncomfortable for them. In other words, sometimes something is mutar, something is permissible, but a person nevertheless feels uncomfortable with that very same thing. But in terms of the halacha, a man or a woman may sit on a bus next to a person of the opposite sex. One should avoid deliberate, or shall we say definite contact between one person and the other, if at all possible. If the contact is inadvertent and fleeting, passing moment, and it can be avoided by sitting an inch further away or something of that nature, then obviously that should be done. Essentially, however, even such contact is not prohibited, is not asur lefi halacha, because there is no intention and no pleasures being derived from this fact. In fact, very likely, very possibly the opposite. The person, as we said, may feel uncomfortable. So anything that we said in a previous shi'ur regarding shomer negiah, about not coming into physical contact with other people of the opposite sex to whom one is not married, anything that we said in this regard does not apply to inadvertent and unavoidable contact of this sort.
What about handing an item or giving change to someone of the opposite gender?
The answer here too is as above. There is no need at all to, for example, in the case of a woman giving you change, for example, there's no need to force her or to hint to her or ask her to place the change on the counter in front of you and that you take it from there, or vice versa in the case of a man and a woman. This is unnecessary. This would also probably be considered somewhat insulting by some people, and perhaps rightly so. It is unnecessary. It is also impractical to do so in many situations. And this kind of behavior is not at all necessary, because any kind of physical contact that may occur in such a situation, such as receiving payment or change or handing a document to someone or what have you, any such physical contact is inadvertent, is not sought after, and does not involve any pleasure or desire, and therefore all such interactions are entirely not problematic in terms of halacha.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.